Oops, you nearly lost me there. This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Evan Jansen. Of course, the show is very much live as always, broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We also stream live on YouTube. Don't forget about that. If you missed some of it, you can watch it back on demand on our YouTube channel. Now, today, we look at the emotive issue of street names in South Africa after an outcry in Cape Town recently. Also, more than 60% of all prostitutes working in South Africa are HIV positive. That's a shocking statistic. We have the arguments then for and against the decriminalization of it a little bit later. We close today by looking at freedom of expression. Are there boundaries that needs to be adhered to? Is a question that we'll ask. So, lots of weighty subjects today. But first, today's news with Katrina Miller.
Well, morning and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrina Malan, and let's just take a look at those top stories this morning. Gauteng police have confirmed that the number of people arrested for looting in several areas around Soweto has risen from 68 to 121. Provincial Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Lesetja Matiba told a press briefing that Soweto was relatively calm overnight. Unrest and looting of foreign-owned shops in Soweto began on Monday when a foreign shop owner shot dead a 14-year-old boy. Now, SABC reporter Mangoba Mhunu is in Soweto this morning. Mangoba, I understand you do have a guest this morning, but would you please just give us an update of what the mood is like and any response to the press briefing before talking to your guest?
Well, certainly, yes, indeed. The situation here in Soweto is currently calm, as you've alluded to in your intro there. Police really assuring Sowetans that they have the situation under control. They say that things have now stabilized overnight, saying that they even made arrests of certain individuals who are believed to be part of the group that was involved in these looting activities. Now we know that 121 people have been arrested, and police say they've been arrested on various charges, which include possession of illegal firearm, theft, as well as attempted murder and murder. So police go really saying that they have the situation under control, and that they are sure that the violence that we saw and the looting that we saw yesterday will really go down today. Now, what police are also saying is that they are really concerned, though, about the increase in illegal firearms around here in the community, saying that they confiscated 11 illegal firearms, 10 of which were confiscated from foreign nationals. Now, they say this is really concerning because they do not know where they got these illegal firearms, and they're still going to investigate to ensure that they find out really how these land up in the hands of community members as well as the foreign nationals. Now, we're going to be speaking to the chairperson of the Community Policing Forums in South Africa, Mr. Mashayile, who's going to really tell us and set the scene as to what is happening on the ground in terms of what they have observed. Mr. Mashayile, welcome to the show.
Good morning to you and to your beautiful viewers.
Mr. Mashayile, can you just tell us firstly how bad is the situation and which areas have been affected so far?
In the last 3-4 days, the situation was out of control, desperately so. But I can report to you that as we speak now, the situation has stabilized in Soweto. The situation has stabilized in Kagiso, where a 52-year-old was shot last night and died upon arrival at Lerato Hospital, allegedly by a foreign national who the police are hunting down. The situation has stabilized in Sebokeng. The police very effectively were able to deal with the issues in the Vereeniging Sebokeng area. I can indicate to you that of the 11 firearms that we have reported about, and the 10 that were possessed by the foreign nationals, we are glad to the South African Police Service as we're doing civilian oversight on the police and actually expect the police to arrest them. We can indicate to you that looting that happened overnight was very serious in the evening, but this morning, as of this morning, the police were able, even though thinly stretched, were able to bring the situation under control. We will be engaging with the community at 10 o'clock at Clapton Police Station, where your local community policing forum members will be there, your ward councillors, the Department of Community Safety, youth from Crossers who joined us 3 days ago on Wednesday when we had a meeting at Naledi Police Station. Generally, the whole community and people from the Peace Corps, who we just spoken to a few minutes ago, will be meeting at 10 o'clock. I'll be chairing that meeting to ensure that there is a permanent solution to the crisis that we find ourselves in. And we think that the major cause of the problem is the availability of drugs. Drug dealers who are within our communities, drug dealers who are not exposed by our communities, those youngsters who are alleged to have been robbing the foreign national store at Doornkop to feed their behavior. I think it is important that we must speak to South Africa and say, wherever there is a drug dealer or a drug lord, it is our responsibility to make sure that we deal with those drugs so that we don't find ourselves in this situation.
And in terms of the reports that you've heard from your members, obviously they're all over these places, the community policing forums. What is the situation like? How many shops so far have been looted? What are we looking at?
Look, the number of shops that have been looted were earlier on reported to by the provincial commissioner. I am not certain now how many shops have been looted as we speak, because we saw some flying squad vehicles and some cars running out and rushing out to other parts of Soweto. So I would rather speak to the conservative number that the provincial commissioner had spoken about.
And your role going forward, what are you going to do as the policing forum to ensure that the situation is also handled or taken care of?
The Gauteng Community Police Board, representing 142 police stations and community policing partnership, has an obligation to harmonize relations between the police and the community and among the community itself in times of any conflict. What we will be doing at 10 o'clock, we'll be chairing that meeting. We'll be asking community members to play an active role in the combating of crime.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Andy Mashaile, who is the chairperson of police community forums here in South Africa. Well, at the moment, as things stand, the situation remains calm, and hopefully police, and I know for sure that they are hoping that the situation will stay like this, and they'll be out in full force to ensure that all criminal activities are brought under book. And certainly they are also saying that 44 of those who were arrested will definitely appear in court today, the Protea Magistrate Court. We're expecting that appearance to take place today, while another group will appear next week. As things stand, as I come back to you in studio, we are observing a number of police cars here, a strong police contingent, and certainly we are expecting the police to maintain a strong visibility here in the area. We do know that Premier David Makura will also be coming into the area to speak to the locals. That will happen around about noon. We are also expecting another press briefing by police at about 11 o'clock this morning, where they'll give us an update on what's happening on the ground at that current time.
Well, Mangoba, our reporter in Soweto this morning, you can keep up to date with him on Twitter at SABC Newsroom as well. Moving on to Davos, Switzerland, where the South African delegation at the World Economic Forum has welcomed opportunities to engage with investors and opinion makers directly. The delegation, led by President Jacob Zuma, has vowed to confront the concerns investors are raising. Yesterday, President Zuma held a bilateral meeting with Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte. South Africa and Netherlands enjoy strong bilateral relations, and meetings served further to enhance cooperation in social, economic and political arenas. The Zambian Electoral Commission is expected to declare a winner to the presidential by-election today as vote counting ends. The electoral body says at least 4 polling stations granted extensions after late delivery of materials where voting was still into the early hours this morning. Meanwhile, Nigeria's National Security Advisor Sandu Dasuki has appealed to the country's Independent National Electoral Commission to delay next month's elections. Dasuki told the commission that a postponement would give organizers more time to distribute millions of biometric ID cards to voters. Hundreds of mourners gathered in Mecca early this morning, a few hours after it was announced that Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud has died. He was 90 years old. The announcement of Abdullah's death comes several weeks after it was reported that he was suffering from pneumonia and had been admitted to hospital. His 89-year-old brother Salman has become his successor. And then Bafana coach Sheikh Mashaba has assured fans that his team is ready to fight for the 3 points they need tonight. The first teams to be knocked out of the African Cup of Nations tournament could possibly come from Group C tonight if Ghana and South Africa lose their games against Algeria and Senegal, respectively. Both the Black Stars and Bafana are currently sitting 3rd and 4th on the standings. I'll remember all of those top stories are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can then also keep up to date with our journos all out and about all over the country on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Now, changing of names remain a controversial and hotly debated issue here in South Africa. Since 1994, there have been a large number of places in the country that have been renamed for political, ethnic, in some places even economic reasons. These name changes were at first to remove politically motivated, incorrectly spelt or offensive names, such as those named after apartheid leaders from the South African landscape. However, since the year 2000, name changes have targeted places of mostly Afrikaans, but in some cases also English-speaking origin, with many places now named after anti-apartheid activists. Now, war of words erupted in Cape Town around the renaming of streets and other public places. The proposed renaming of Table Bay Boulevard in particular, after former President F.W. de Klerk, sparked much controversy. Now, we are joined in Cape Town by Western Cape Provincial Secretary of COSATU, Mr. Tony Ehrenreich, and then the chairperson of the naming committee, that's with the City of Cape Town, Mr. Brett Heron. A very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning.
Brett, if I can start with you, just set the scene for us. The name changes, especially the emotive one that's caused the stir, F.W. de Klerk, who I must add is still alive. Why the decision to honour him now?
Well, Evan, I think we must start by acknowledging that the decision is not final. It's a recommendation to Council from the naming committee.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to acknowledge that almost every single proposal we've taken to Council has resulted in a lot of emotion, and almost every proposal has had those who are opposed to it and those who favour it. So it's a difficult process to manage, and the results don't always please everybody, and that's why it's important that we focus on the process and making sure that the process is above board. We ensure that there's an adequate and comprehensive public consultation process. So even those who are not happy about the outcome will at least be able to say that the process was fair and they had an opportunity to influence the outcome.
Tony, if I can go to you, you've been a vociferous opponent of these changes. Tell us why, and also qualify the remarks that's been going around in the media around certain types of animals, baboons, the like.
Well, firstly, let me say that the question of the process is a non-issue in this respect. This is a matter where F.W. de Klerk is wanting to be honoured. F.W. de Klerk, if he was in any other country, would have been tried for war crimes or crimes against humanity. Here was a man that in 1993, before the Nobel Peace Prizes were awarded, but it was already indicated, he authorized the killing of people in Transkei. Mandela himself said on his way to Oslo that de Klerk has blood on his hands. How can we honor a man like this? And lest, how can we honor him in a way that wants to elevate him to the same level like Mandela? Whoever Mandela's negotiating partner was, and here the devil himself, or a monkey, was his negotiating partner, and he would also have got the Nobel Peace Prize, because that was a politically expedient decision by the Nobel Committee. What we have here is very different issues. And the worst point is that if de Klerk had had a miraculous change of view about his support and his role in the structure of apartheid, then he may have been worthy of consideration for something. But here's a man who in a recent interview tried to justify separate development and homelands. So there hasn't been a change of values from the day that he was a killer under apartheid. All he's done is he's been part of the negotiations to defend those things that were stolen under apartheid, and so that black people could get the minimum as part of the process of the change in the democratic structure of South Africa. So he's certainly not worthy of any kind of acknowledgement. If he's going to be acknowledged in any way, then he should get a side street in Constantia, because those are the people whose interest he defended in South Africa and in the negotiations. He's not concerned about all of the people. Mandela himself said that de Klerk is insensitive to the plight of black people. So I don't want to discuss the procedure that Brett's responding to. That's a non-issue. We're talking about the value system, the morals, and the very future of our country.
Within the context of that future, Tony, is reconciliation then dead? Are we not going to extend that olive branch even further, as we have to, for the future of our children, if not ours?
Reconciliation is absolutely important, and we have to take it forward as a country. But reconciliation comes from both sides. Black people have acted magnanimously by making sure that all the crimes that white people have committed against them were forgiven. But the land theft, the marginalization, the exclusion, the lack of educational facilities, all those things that existed under apartheid still exist today. And people like de Klerk, through his de Klerk Foundation, is one of the most vociferous argumenters of ensuring that the apartheid generational advantages of white people stays in place. So if de Klerk wants to be part of the reconciliation agenda, he must promote the notion of us coming together, undoing the past, and build a country of greater equality. And so we can't acknowledge a man like that. And I would go further to say that all the DA is doing here, by acknowledging somebody like de Klerk, and de Klerk is the leader of the Nationals Party, like Theuns Botha is now part of the DA leadership, is to try and sanitize and make the DA and the National Party look better. Many of their members are one of the worst architects of apartheid, and now they're trying to do a spin job to make them look better. This is really atrocious. Let's focus on the key things of delivery that our people require, and not some silly process that's going to honor what is really a murder in any other country.
Brett, I want to come to you. I want you to respond to that, but before you respond to that, I want to ask you an even weightier question. Cape Town over the last year has been battling with racial incident after racial incident. The undertones of this discussion, does it not play into the hands of those that wish to racialize Cape Town? And should it not be maybe reconsidered?
Well, I don't think it plays into the hands of ordinary Cape Townians who are not racist. You know, I think the opportunities to exploit this by some people are unfortunate. People are taking an opportunity to exploit this. I think the process that the city has followed in renaming in general has been to build this inclusive city. We are addressing the imbalance and the historical imbalance in place naming across our city, and we're doing it in a considered way where we are consulting with communities before we implement changes. So the city itself and the government is working towards building an inclusive city. As in all cities around the world, there are people on the fringes who are racist and act out on those attitudes. But the city government is not responsible for those individuals. Our role is to build the city of inclusivity.
Tony, I want to come to you quickly and talk about this issue of race in Cape Town. We've seen all these incidents, people being shambocked, urinated on, domestic workers being slapped around, kids assaulting older women. All these kinds of things have happened in Cape Town. How do you respond to that? Is Cape Town more racially segregated today than 20 years ago?
There's no doubt that it is, and there's no doubt that the leadership of the City of Cape Town and the provincial government pushes a racist agenda in the sense of defending the apartheid generational advantages. This process of name changing that Brett is mentioning is a nonsense, because look at where the black names are. Other than Mandela has got an important street name, the black names are out in the Cape Flats hidden away, whilst many of the white name changes are in the key parts of the city, and they defend many of the old architects of apartheid staying there. But look at how resources are allocated in the Cape Town, the portfolio that Brett's responsible for. Where's the best bus system in the city of Cape Town? In the old white area of Milnerton and Blouberg. That's where the city starts. That's where they focus. So they're creating the impression by their attitude that we're going to defend the apartheid generational advantages. We're going to try and keep the refugees out. and we're going to defend those people who historically our parties were part of defending. And by their actions and by their lack of condemnation strongly of these racist attacks and these racist behaviors, they're fueling it and they're endorsing it. And now they're putting the cherry on the top by honoring the arch-racist of apartheid and the arch-racist now F.W. de Klerk in this way, because that's the way in which they try to present how they're going to defend white people's interest at the cost of black people's interest and at the cost of greater equality and nation building, not only in the city of Cape Town and the Western Cape, but bringing all of our people together across the country. They're trying to divide the people because that's their political agenda, to try and hold on to power. And so it's not about anything that focuses on our people as a whole and taking our country forward where people move with greater equality.
Brett, final remarks belong to you this morning. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think the ANC in locally has some clarity to find amongst themselves. You know, in 2000, when the ANC was in government and the mayor was Noma India Mfeketo, the ANC named a street after F.W. de Klerk in a mostly coloured area called West Bank. Even recently, as recent as Sunday, I think Trevor Manuel was trying to provide some leadership to the local ANC branches by indicating that former President Mandela regarded F.W. de Klerk as a man of integrity and indicated, as was reported, that he supported the name change. And then we even have councillors, at least one councillor that I'm aware of within the ANC caucus in the city of Cape Town, the caucus that Tony leads, who wrote in during the public consultation process to support the renaming. So it's an issue that is the ANC, I think, needs to find some clarity about where they stand on this. And I would urge them, in the interest of reconciliation, to support this.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. It's an issue that we will have another discussion on, I would like to have in the future, because it's such a dividing scenario playing out in Cape Town at the moment. But the backstory of it, of course, is that there are also issues with racial incidents and the like in Cape Town. It seems the city is more divided than ever. We'll keep you updated here on Newsroom. That was Tony Ehrenreich, of course, who is the Western Cape Provincial Secretary of COSATU, and also Brett Herron, who's the chairperson of this renaming committee of street names in Cape Town. But let's have a look at your tweets. What are you talking about? What are you saying on this Friday morning? Well, there we have some pictures coming in from Soweto. Tsepo Mohapi says, at Kesehwale, it's not xenophobia, we're going. I don't quite get that. Anyhow, yeah, there we say. It's sad when you see people you grew up with looting from fellow Africans. Drink beer and raise hell, says the T-shirt of the young man in the picture there. Oh, my word. If that is our future, then we are in trouble. This is not xenophobia. That one from Tabiso Dlamini. It's the work of opportunistic individuals. How can you be carrying the fridge out of the store? Really? Seriously? Klemsomi says, they're stealing our jobs. Yo, entrepreneurs work for themselves. Go back home and draft another excuse. No, they're definitely not stealing our jobs. That is a fact. It's just whenever there's an economic downturn and unemployment, the first one to bear the brunt are the immigrants in every country. That's the case all around the world. Now, the tweet of the day, presented today by Roger Patrick Kelly on freedom of speech, Nochal. He says, those who wish to control freedom of speech are really trying to control freedom of thought. What is freedom of thought without the freedom to speak? Thank you very much, Roger Patrick Kelly. Yes, we're going to talk about freedom of speech a little bit later in our show. I can tell you, having been in the media for as long as me, I'm not always sure what the fuss is about freedom of speech. Anyhow, let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. There you'll see on the front page of this week's New Yorker, inspired by photographs of the Selma to Montgomery March. This, the United States celebrated the life and achievements of Martin Luther King Jr. this week. The Jerusalem Post is reporting that relations between Barack Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu, that is the Israeli Prime Minister, have reached a new low as the White House revealed the U.S. President would not meet the Israeli Prime Minister when he visits Republican leaders of Congress in March. And in China, the South China Morning Post takes a look at the country's gravest public health hazards and warns of a heat wave that is about to hit that country. Now, before we go to a break, let's just take a quick look at what's happening today. There it is. It's in the High Court in Pretoria. Judgment is expected to be delivered in an application by the Helen Suzman Foundation for an order declaring the suspension of Hawks boss Anwar Dramat invalid. We stay in the capital, Pretoria. Judgment is also expected in an application by apartheid-era chemical warfare expert Dr. Wouter Basson to remove the head of the HPCSA committee, sentencing him for unethical conduct. Then in Nelspruit, in Mpumalanga, 4 men will appear on charges of stealing rhino horn worth 160 million rand from the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency. It's a story that we did here on Newsroom some time ago, and we'll maybe get a recap next week. In Equatorial Guinea, Ghana will face Algeria at 6 p.m. and South Africa will face the mighty Senegal at 9 p.m. this evening. The whole country will be watching. Let's hope we can eke out a win so that we stay in the tournament. You're watching Newsroom. Bring the good news after a short break.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture.
A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. It's estimated that 60% of sex workers in South Africa are HIV positive. The statistics were announced by the South African National AIDS Council, SANAC, at the launch of a national HIV/AIDS program for sex workers here in Johannesburg. The program aims to roll out South Africa's first ever HIV care and treatment plan for sex workers. Sex work is still illegal here in South Africa. The comments made by the Justice Deputy Minister, John Jeffrey, says sex work is having a negative impact on the country. Judging by his statement, it's clear that we will not see the decriminalization in this lifetime, it seems. Now, the question is, will this program yield results, or decriminalization is the only way to go and try and put an end to these issues and other issues facing sex workers? Now, to help us unpack this emotive issue, we are joined from Sex Workers Education and the Advocacy Task Force SWET. That's Diane Masawe, who's with me in studio this morning. A very good morning to you. And then from our Cape Town studios, we are joined by Nozizwe Madlala Routledge, who is Embrace Dignity's Executive Director. A very good morning to you as well, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you, Eben. And good morning to you, Nozizwe.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Diane.
Let's start with the comments, Diane, of the Deputy Minister, John Jeffrey, about sex work being a negative and having a negative impact on society. How do you view that?
I mean, I was at that meeting with the Deputy Minister, and I think his statement or his comment was taken out of context. What he was referring to, some of the things that the ministry and the government will have to consider when we begin this law reform commission process, and when the government actually has to consider what laws that the government should take for the country. So these are one of the things that they have to look at. In terms of whether it's going to negatively impact the country, I think that is for us to still have further communications and conversations around, because as an organization, we really don't think that decrim of sex work will negatively impact the country. But what we do know is the criminalization of sex work currently negatively impacts sex workers and their clients.
Nozizwe, if I can come to you in Cape Town, it's the oldest profession. It's accepted. It's always been done. It's legal elsewhere in the world with some results. Why would you put decriminalization as a negative and out of the question here in South Africa?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you and SABC for bringing us together in this very important debate. And I want to appeal to South Africans that it is about time that we resolve this issue. We have been debating it since the dawn of our democracy. And in the meantime, very many young girls and young women are having their lives wrecked. They are experiencing abuse at the hands of men. And we really think that it is time for South Africa to do the right thing. Now, in relation to your question, I want to agree with the Deputy Minister of Justice to say prostitution has a negative impact on society. And I would agree also that we do need to study it very deeply in order to understand its full impact on the individuals concerned and society. Third, I want to say that as Embrace Dignity, we do not support total decriminalization. We also know that the present situation in South Africa where we have total criminalization doesn't work. So the debate really is between, as you can hear, between whether we should totally decriminalize prostitution or whether we should decriminalize the sex workers. Embrace Dignity supports the idea that those in prostitution needs to be decriminalized in order for them to be better protected by the law, for them to access health care, and for them to be able to exit. But the industry itself, there's no basis for it to be decriminalized. Those who buy sex do not have a right to do so. Those who pimp women and those who benefit, who profit from the exploitation don't have the right to do so, and we say they should remain criminalized. So we're pushing for partial decriminalization, which we think, in fact, you say that the rest of the world has legalized prostitution. This is not the case. In fact, a number of countries...
49 countries have legalized it.
Okay, yes, 49 out of how many countries? If you look at the United Nations...
Out of around 200.
We have very many countries in the world. And in fact, those that have legalized, look at the Netherlands. They legalized prostitution in 2000. They are reconsidering that. Germany is reconsidering. And here's the issue. Here's the thing. They've not been able to better protect the women by legalizing or decriminalizing prostitution. Instead, they've seen a growth in human trafficking because, of course, it just makes sense. Where there's demand, there'll be supply. So they've seen a growth in human trafficking. Women have been killed. It just hasn't protected them better. There's
everywhere, Nozizwe, where there's a blanket ban, and that's where I think Diane can come in and talk about. Everywhere where there's a blanket ban, there's always an undercurrent and an underbelly that develops, and that might even be worse in this case. But Diane, how do you view this?
I mean, it is true. I think when we have total criminalization, that doesn't work. And I think people who support the notion of total criminalization have the notion that if the industry is criminalized, the industry is going to go away. In South Africa, we've had total criminalization since 2007, and the industry hasn't gone away. I mean, and yes, you know, Nozizwe is speaking about partial criminalization or partial decrim, where the sex worker is allowed to work, but her client is criminalized, the industry is criminalized. And a country that comes to mind is Sweden. And working with sex workers in Sweden and organizations who work with sex workers in Sweden, we know that this model is also not working in Sweden. Because what then happens is for sex workers who want to do sex work and who want to protect their clients, they then go underground and they actually then expose themselves to higher risks of violence at the hands of clients, police, but also other criminal elements that want to abuse them. And when we speak about the Netherlands, Yes, in the Netherlands, once again, it's a legalized model where sex workers are allowed to work if they are allowed to work in a certain area. And once again, this also doesn't work because it means if sex workers choose to work outside that area, they're committing a crime. So I think for South Africa, and yes, I think we can learn from other countries, and we need to find a model that works in this country, looking at our conditions in this country. We need to find a model where the industry is allowed to work, where we have special laws to protect people, from people who are doing sex work, to also provide people who want to leave with options.
Yeah.
When we talk about criminalizing the client and saying the client doesn't have to buy, the reality is the client has the option to buy. And a lot of times the client is an adult who is going to buy services. So why should we criminalize that?
Yes. Absolutely. You've got the final remarks this morning, Nozizwe. Tell us how you view that and what model would you like to see put in place?
Well, I don't have the final word. I think South Africa will have the final word. That's why I really welcome the idea or the announcement from government that they are going to open this debate to the public. I would like to hear the views of the different sectors of our society talking about this. But let me just end by saying we've asked Parliament in December, at the end of the 16 days of no violence against women and children, we marched to Parliament and we asked the Speaker of Parliament and the Chair of the National Council of Provinces to do a thorough investigation in South Africa because we have twin problems. We have very high levels of violence against women, and that, Diane, I'm sure you agree with us. There's a very strong connection between sexual abuse and sexual exploitation. So we need this to be understood and studied. We also have very high levels of unemployment, which drive a lot of prostitution, a large number of the women, and we work with them directly. 89% of them want to leave prostitution because this is not their choice. This is not their first choice. But poverty is driving prostitution. So we want Parliament to investigate this matter, to understand what is driving prostitution, what can we do about it? And we're not calling for, as you say, a total ban. We are saying those in prostitution need to be decriminalized. But others who have power need to remain criminalized, like the men who buy women. They have no right to do that.
There will always be a market for this, unfortunately, and I speak for men out there who might have a different perspective. But thank you for joining us today, Nozizwe Madlala-Routledge, who is with Embrace Dignity, the Executive Director, and then Diane Masawe from Sweat here in Johannesburg. Thank you for joining us. It's a discussion that we will continue to have throughout the year, Diane, as we continue to have both public forum where we talk about sex work in South Africa. It's not something that'll go away. There's no doubt about it. We can't wish it away, and we simply can't make laws that will make it go away. It's not going to happen. Thank you, though, for joining us.
Thank you, Eben.
Diane will be back throughout the rest of the year to talk about these as we continue discussions around sex work in South Africa. What do you think? At SABC Newsroom, that's where you can give us your views on it. You'll also be able to engage in wider forums throughout the rest of the year. Now, Day 6 of 2015 AFCON is a big one for us. After all, 4 teams took an equal share, the 2015 African Cup of Nations, Group B, last night, with Tunisia winning against Zambia. Tunisia currently leading there with 4 points in that group. On the other hand, the tournament brought nothing but drama as Cape Verde drew against the Congo. There you have the Group A standings. Yes, very much at the top at the moment is Congo with Gabon in second place. If we look at the other groups, Group B, Tunisia very much in pole position after 2 matches there. Cape Verde could be the surprise package, I say, in this tournament. Let's have a look at Bafana Bafana's Group C. Of course, it's a big day today in Group C. It could all be settled today if Ghana and South Africa lose. As you can see there, 3 points to both Algeria and Senegal. Ghana and South Africa simply have to win in order to open up this group. And if Ghana and South Africa do, then, well, it's all to play for on Tuesday next week. Final group there, Ivory Coast, Mali, Cameroon, Guinea, nothing in it. Goal difference, draws for all, 1 point. There is all to play for. Now, send us your views, of course, to at SABC Newsroom. If you're fast on the dials, we might even put up some of your Bafana wishes before the end of the show today. But let's have a look at some of the wishes that you've sent in for Bafana. Tsepiso Machema says, Sheikh Masaba said he's using young players, those with more energy and hunger for winning. Oh, yeah, and them can come, yes, but will they score? Yes. It's all about getting the ball in the net at the end of the day. Sheikh says AFCON 2015 fact, South Africa is one of 3 countries in Africa with a local coach, and he's only lost 10. No, he's won 10 of 11 games. Sheikh, don't be so harsh. Tsepiso again says the strength of the crocodile is in the river. We are saying to the nation, be our river. Sheikh Mashaba says, damn, he's a legend for days. Yes, I like the crocodile thing. We'll say an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. This is Newsroom. We'll be taking a short break and back with freedom of expression and a lovely poetry interlude after the break.
Hello and welcome to your world on SABC News Channel 404. I'm Tabile Ngwato.
And I'm Lulu Gabu.
President Uhuru Kenyatta says he will attend the status conference for his crimes against humanity case, but in his personal capacity and not as president of Kenya.
Judges insist he attends this status conference.
About 50 Kenyan MPs are expected to travel to The Hague to express solidarity with President Kenyatta.
The Kenya cases have really tested the International Criminal Court in ways that it hasn't yet been tested.
Your World, weekdays at 9 p.m.
Coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. Welcome to AM News on SABC News. We're on DSTV channel 404. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll be taking you through all the developing stories, all the leading stories in South Africa, in the continent of Africa and the rest of the world. The power utility has attributed the current wave of load shedding to what it has described as unforeseen technical problems at current power stations. Eskom has warned that there is a risk of a total blackout if consumers do not use electricity sparingly.
We must work together to make this world better for all. This is what Nelson Mandela told us. He taught us a very important lesson.
That's AM News, daily at 10 a.m. on SABC News.
Well, hello and welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just recap the top stories this morning. Gauteng police have confirmed that the number of people arrested for looting in several areas around Soweto has risen from 68 to 121. Provincial Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Lesetja Motiba told a press briefing that Soweto was relatively calm overnight. Unrest and looting of foreign-owned shops in Soweto began on Monday when a foreign shop owner shot dead a 14-year-old boy. Moving to Davos, Switzerland, where the South African delegation at the World Economic Forum has welcomed opportunities to engage with investors and opinion makers directly. The delegation, led by President Jacob Zuma, has vowed to confront the concerns investors are raising. Yesterday, President Zuma held a bilateral meeting with Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte. South Africa and Netherlands enjoy strong bilateral relations, and the meeting served to further enhance cooperation in social, economic, cultural and political arenas. And Bafana coach Sheikh Mashaba has assured fans that his team is ready to fight for the 3 points they need tonight. The first teams to be knocked out of the African Cup of Nations tournament could possibly come from Group C tonight if Ghana and South Africa lose their games against Algeria and Senegal respectively. Both the Black Stars and Bafana are currently sitting 3rd and 4th on the standings. Remember, all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. Then you can also keep up to date with our journos all out and about all over the country on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you, Katrina. 23 days into 2015, the debate on freedom of expression has come to the fore around the globe. From the tragic Paris attack and satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo to Zaldo Lachranche's heated Twitter argument with those who don't agree with the views here in South Africa, we ask, what are the limits then of freedom of expression? And in a time when all of us are encouraged to share our thoughts on dozens now of social media platforms, is there need for limits? Well, to help us with this discussion, we are joined today by Right to Know spokesperson Jayshree Patha, who's with me in studio, and also Khomotso Makapane, who's a partner of corporate law firm Bowman Gilfillian. Very good morning to you guys.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. I want to start with right at the top. Is there such a thing as freedom of expression under a capitalist system in the world? Is it possible?
I think it's a very important question, and I think that that's one of the dimensions that we have to address in South Africa, and I think that's why the issue of Zaldo Lachranche has become such a controversial thing. The reality is we are a deeply divided society, given our history of colonization, our legacy of apartheid, but we are also one of the most unequal countries in the world.
Yes.
And a part of the debate that hasn't happened in terms of this is who is in Twitter sphere in the first place. So we talk about black Twitter and white Twitter, but what is the class dynamic? Who can afford to be on Twitter? Who can afford to have this freedom of expression?
Absolutely. That's the point. It comes down to the financial aspects, and also, you know, in America they call it lobbying. What do you pay for and so forth, and what do you give up? Sometimes I'm in the media and I feel that we need to maybe open our eyes a little bit. But what does the lawyer say today? Give us your overall thoughts on this.
I think it's important to recognize that freedom of speech is enshrined in our Constitution, together with other rights,
Yes.
Rights like human dignity, like privacy. And it is important, therefore, that when we speak of freedom of speech, we also take into account all these other rights. Of course, freedom of speech is important insofar as democracy is concerned, as she said, given the past that you have. But of importance is talking about the debate ought to be, from where I'm sitting, the balance between the different rights that we have.
Yeah. I want to talk about, in light of Zaldo's recent rant, the Twitter rant that caused such a stir here in South Africa, should influential people, or should they be sharing their comments in these open forums in the way that they do? I personally have removed myself a little bit from Twitter because I feel, it's often misconstrued and what I have to say can't really be put in 140 characters. But how do you view this?
I think that's the lesson to be learned from this. There's a lot of excitement about being able to share our thoughts, our views, and we want to encourage that. But it does come with responsibility. It does have an impact. We need to understand the medium. Twitter, for example, Facebook, means that the minute you get it out, it's instant, it's viral, it just spreads. And so I think a lot more forethought at the beginning to think about what am I saying and what impact will it have. So part of that responsibility that comes with these rights that we have. So I think that's something that South Africans are going to have to get up to speed much faster about. Because we're a very opinionated society as well. We love sharing our views, and we should. That's how to build a vibrant, robust democracy. But we have to think much more clearly about the impact of what it is that we're saying.
Andy Hall said in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. Nakhomotso, tell us, you give workshops to all these people that make themselves famous on Twitter and other social media platforms. What are the do's and don'ts that you tell these people around the legal aspects of social media?
I think, first, it is important to recognize that social media, it's not different from print media. And that when you speak on social media, or when you tweet, or you make a post on Facebook, that you may be held accountable for it. And I think the most important thing as well is understanding that once you put it out there, it is no longer within your control, because even if you remove it, it may be retweeted or reposted. And therefore, it is very important for people to think before they post, think before they write, think before they tweet, but importantly, think before you like a post, or when someone tags you on a post, understand the implications. Just to give an example as well, if you work for the SABC, and you make a tweet or make a post on Facebook, that is somehow defamatory. The SABC may be implicated as well, and therefore there are employment implications there, but also there are statutes in our country that protects against harassment and therefore you may be prosecuted. So all those things are important to take into account. But social media has taken off so fast that it has left the development of the law in its wake.
Yes.
But the good thing is the courts are empowered to develop the constitution in line with the common law. And I think that is our reprieve.
So the frameworks are trying to catch up with the medium itself. I want to talk about this idea that there's limits. We talk about the constitutional rights of people, and then there's an idea that there should be limits to freedom of expression and freedom of speech. How do you view that?
I think it would be better to get a legal perspective on that. But just to say, I mean, I think it is. It's an enabling right, so we say that it's a right that enables others, but I think it is one of those rights that's just really one of the hardest to wrap our heads around. I'm a feminist, so am I going to be comfortable having some sexist person standing there? They're free to express their views.
Yeah.
So to be able to accept my right to have my opinion and somebody's right, however distasteful, however uncomfortable it is a very difficult thing. But there are limitations, and you had a great little image earlier that said freedom of expression, conditions apply. And it's the debate about what are those conditions that we need to be having as a society in South Africa.
Well, guys, we've run out of time. This is the discussion I really would like to take a little bit deeper, because we haven't even touched on Charlie Hebdo. You know, there's the Twitter within the war scenarios as it play out. There are other issues around freedom of speech, the financial aspects and so forth. Hopefully we'll have this a lot more as we go throughout the year. But thank you very much for joining us today around this emotive issue. The limits. Are there limits? Should there be limits to freedom of expression? I think there should always be limits to everything. Anything that has no limits can often land you into trouble and often cause trouble for others, or even pain and suffering for others. And that's should be a main consideration. Now, we're going to close today with a special closing. We have Matodzi Gift Ramashia, known as Makhafula Vilakazi. As we had listened to the message he was delivering to us in December of 2014, he's brought something very nice for us to listen to. He's a poet. Good morning, Makhafula. What do you have for us today?
It's a poem called Makhafula Vilakazi.
Makhafula Vilakazi, please take us into the weekend with a little bit of wisdom.
Ngilale ngendlala ngifasa ibhanda ubusuku bonke hardcore malambano odajukelwe kunini libheshwa lekhanva selizelikhathele nale janguva sezezangiyanya ngihlala ngibhodla indlala ngiphila ngebhantshi amabhiya ngiyancengisa igada ngiyancengisa inkaza ngihlala ngishaya amapenalty ngishiyelwa nezikhokho zamakota khona manje bengibotshelwa amasimbo okutholakala ngestage ekhoneni ngatrela Dectus manjani ngenxa 200 ebail ngiyabuya ngivula icar wash nithi ngigcwalisa abantwana benestradini ngidlala idisk ngihlatshwa amabhodlela emkantsheni ngiyanishiyela niyangidlalisela ningibiza ngomnyamana ungcolingcoli nala endlini angisakwazi nokubloma sengibalekiswa indlala ngihlala ncinga masefuna umakhelwane ngibukela ama DVD ngibona nje ukuthi nginhluphe embongole engafundi isikole ezofundisa abantwana babinsango all of the sums of all of the violence, the cries and all of the endless deprivation swelling inside and coughing out a heartless, very, very angry and dangerous young lion with a semi-automatic assault weapon. Madam, come here. Why do you hide? Why do you hide? Madam, come here. My name is Makhafula Vilakazi. How many people are in the house? Where's the safe? Where's the car keys? Madam, speak fast. I'm a very, very fast gun. Esbeva ka unangazoloku ubhekelele 24 shit izophelela kuwe. Ngizokudla ngomchofi kuzovuthi ibhola lomlilo. Hambe kathathe madam mfake phuthi nithathe mhlawumbe ulifake ekarini. Ukuthi le car mayicula simthathe ngese situation simjije simdubule sethi samaphophona lenge efensini. Qale hill project sathi matheri ngithombe masuke ngojini ka Vija. Silahle lo mthando phuthi emfuleni scrapyard. Sole 218 sibhaqame silale siqinile. Sifike kuseni sithole emshiyane ngama top skipper nama long sleeve ama DMDs uyasithula lonke lokisha ama branda viko nange ngizwe ngani mina ngidela kufa ngomaraba maroni boma sibona izulu ingwazi beyiphuphu magwaze eqhuzuku mahleke bulawo nongolozo umdaka umelusi imadadu mabula igadu azalwe gaqa maphakwe ephanda okwagwaza ngomaswali okwazi abalazi wabuye exile wabuye ngafundilwa rifema lendlela ngumaphekwa ngesibhamu mina ngabona inhliziyo ngisagqoka ischool shoes mina ngaphula ibhodlela ngisakhasa nani kuphi.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they return stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
While the majority of domestic violence victims are women, abuse of men happens far more often than you'd probably expect. Typically, men are physically stronger than women, but that doesn't necessarily make it easier to escape violence in relationships. Mashilo Mnisi's story is one of the many untold stories of